So we are live, guys. Hello and welcome, guys, to another edition of Samosa Talks. Today I have with me Neha Sharma Katyal. She's the business head West and South at Twitter. On the personal front, she is a tennis player and she loves watching competitive sports. She's a mother and welcome to Samosa Talks, Neha. Good to have you here. Good to catch up with you pre-chat as well. So,
Hi,
Neha,
Ritik. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, before I get to the topic, Neha, would love to understand from you what Twitter means to you as a platform when you consume it personally, and at the same time when you look at it as an advertising and marketing professional.
I think the platform is just so powerful. It serves the public conversation, and the kind of I come here with the purpose of what Twitter serves, the kind of objectives that it drives, that gets people together, and gets them to talk about something from ranging from all kinds of topics and passion points. I think that is what really drives me to be here. You're making an impact every day, and you're creating conversations and giving people a platform to share their own opinions. That I feel is the strongest suit that the platform has. And for brands to, to lean in and speak to this audience on a day-to-day basis, have that liberty to have a two-way chat, that is something that's really powerful.
Interesting. And like you spoke about how Twitter essentially defines the mood of the nation. So from understanding media and entertainment landscape on Twitter, what are the kind of conversations that you see on Twitter around entertainment on a day-to-day basis?
Absolutely. I feel Twitter is the conversation layer of the internet, right? It gives you the front row seat into the world of entertainment. I think the media and the M&E industry has completely transformed. It's not the same as it used to be. Every day on the platform is a red carpet sized moment. And people are constantly talking about all things entertainment, from movies to TV, cooking, sports. They're watching it and they're tweeting along with it. So the pandemic, so to say, has seen an uptake of people looking at digital forms, on entertainment, and that is their escape. And they found comfort in this new normal. We've actually seen about 100 million entertainment conversations in India in a single quarter, and about 70% rise in unique authors. These numbers talk for itself on how the entertainment category has played such a pivotal role in people's lives. So, in terms of conversation trends, if I had to break it down and what Twitter has to offer, it really boils down to discovering new content. Everything from recommendations, you're on the timeline to find out what those recommendations are, and to do community viewing. The conversations really range from title excitement to ratings of shows to spoiler discussions, name it. Secondly, it would be probably the synergy between TV and Twitter. Twitter truly plays the second screen, and especially for sports and major entertainment events like awards. Um, the third big trend that I would see is going beyond the 280 characters and leaning into podcasts and audio content. That is something that is really lit and it's really picking up. People are finding that human expression to come out through audio, and then completely leaning into regional languages. I feel that's a big talking point for most people, where regional languages are playing a pivotal role in the way people talk today. So yeah, that's those are the bigger conversation trends that I see in the M&E space.
Okay. And like from what I know of Twitter, from the time when I had joined the platform and I was initially when I was following it, I know that Twitter is all about moments. It's all about real life instances which connect people. There are, like you said, I mean, there is content being created in the media space. There's content being created for from a review perspective, from a like information sharing perspective again. So, what are the kind of consumption trends you've seen? So, these were the conversation trends that you shared, but from a Twitter user's consumption, what is it that you have seen and observed, and like those insights might help. brands and agencies watching this reel?
Yeah, absolutely. I think consumption is a very key insight to have. And 2020, so to say, was the defining year, a year where people needed escapes and distractions. And the way people watch content has completely changed, right? So, with more choices than ever, people are empowered to seek out what really matters to them on a more personal front. And that's where I feel marketers and their advertising choices must follow suit. So terms like binge watching or virtual viewing parties, these have become part of our regular vocabulary. And consumers are constantly looking for new ways and new unique TV shows or films or music that traverse borders, countries, language, and culture. So that's where the marketeers step in and need to understand where their audiences lie. Seeking recommendations continues to be a very strong trend, even in the way people consume content, and the way they escape and look into those as their habits. From studies, I think it shows that 55% of Indian viewers prefer OTT platforms. But there is still a strong majority of people, which is about 41%, that lean into traditional media. So this shows that India is still a market that's divided by demographics, where your boomers and your Gen X will lean into traditional services versus your millennials and Gen Z thrive on the new media options. So with the evolving tastes across the OTT spectrum, I think there is a lot to play with. It's a disruptive force in the entertainment world, and many more trends will surface as we go along. But yeah, it needs to be talent first, artist first, or a fan first approach. So when you play on these two parameters, which is from an artist lens and from a fan lens, that's where brands fit in.
And like you mentioned about the class, like not the classification, but you were talking about millennials, Gen Z, Gen X. So if you had to like, and I know that you might not have the numbers at the back of your head, but if you had to tell us that, say, of the 100% people from from India on Twitter, what is the classification like? Like in terms of millennials, Gen Z, Gen X.
So over 35%, I would say, are in the millennial zone and the Gen Z zone. So you've got a really younger audience thriving on the platform. And there is scope for everybody to coexist, right? So you can plan your audiences, plan your content. From an advertiser standpoint, you can always bucket your audiences, reach out to the ones that matter, and understand where your audiences lie, and create content basis that. So there is a plethora of the range that exists on the timeline. It's just up to the advertisers how they want to reach out to them through those advertising cohorts that you build.
Great. And like you've been talking about a lot of like on how brands should be using Twitter, like how media and entertainment brands should be using Twitter specifically. So what are some of the campaigns that you have spotted like that have stood out for you in the media and entertainment space and you felt that okay, this is probably one of the best use cases I've seen, and like it could be a couple of them, you could share some thoughts.
Absolutely. I think we can go with launching something new when a brand wants to launch a new title, and also going on the other step, which is connecting with what's happening. So I'll start with the latter, and I'll give you one of my favorite examples. It's probably Spotify. And Spotify wanted to connect with World Music Day. So this is a connect moment where they're trying to own this day, and build resonance with people on Twitter, right? So we wondered how Spotify India would really stand out on World Music Day, and there were multiple topical moments going on the same day. So this is last year when it coincided with Yoga Day, with Father's Day, and Solar Eclipse Day, right? So we still wanted a brand like Spotify to stand out and have a voice during World Music Day. What they did was, we leaned into the conversations that were playing out, and we understood that music is all about expressing emotions. And Spotify really has a playlist for every emotion. So when today's generation also expresses their emotions through emojis, so the whole campaign was devised around using emojis in the most creative way to drive the objective that Spotify has this extensive library, right? So on World Music Day, what we did was we developed a engine at our backend that mapped 3,400 emojis with 3,400 playlists on Spotify and drove scale through automation. This campaign was actually geo-fenced only to India, but it really took off. Like the K-pop fan armies, everyone who loved music tuned in for 24 hours and participated by using the campaign hashtag that was play this and any emoji, the mood that they were feeling on that day. The campaign literally trended globally number five and trended number one across nine other countries. It picked up and it had so much steam because it was an automated campaign. There was a tweet flying every second and a recommendation going from Spotify every second, which was phenomenal to see. They actually got 2x more mentions in that single 24 hours than they did in the whole first half of the year.
Wow.
So, really phenomenal stats that we saw from this campaign. It actually went on to win them seven elephants right now at the Curious Awards 2021. I believe it was a really tough jury, and to land and to impress them seven times over, I feel is a feat in itself. So, campaign delivered fantastically, and it was one of my favorites in the M&E space, especially when you're connecting with what's happening, right? And the second piece that I can talk about is when you're launching a new title. How do you build that excitement to launch a title that's coming through? A recent one that comes to mind is Jagame Thandiram, which was a Dhanush film and leading into the very, very passionate South audiences. What we did for this campaign was we actually, in the tease phase, did a fan recruitment only on Twitter. So we got people to participate in a gamification contest, gave them challenges, and these are hardcore fans, right? Super passionate, regional love that they have. They participated in approximately three challenges, and the winners, 300 winners, got front row seats through a Zoom call into a live virtual event. So they did a live event. They got a lot of influencers and talent on this event, which was simulcast across multiple platforms to drive excitement among the fans just a day before launch. And that literally broke into the launch factor, and we also did a spaces with them. So really fun ways of launching something new and connecting with what's happening.
Right. And so speaking of, like, you spoke about how fans were engaged for a launch campaign, and I know that fan clubs in general play a very important role in marketing the movie. So from a Twitter standpoint, again, how many, like, you think that there is a lot of scope for a entertainment brand or a title to build a community on Twitter, like say fan clubs. I know that say celebrities or artists have like huge fan clubs.
Right.
Even like titles which are popular and have the legacy from over the years have fan clubs. But you see that that should be like when an entertainment marketer is on the drawing board, should they also think about these fan insights and these fan clubs as a part of their marketing mix?
Absolutely, 100%. So these fan armies and fan clubs exist, and they are there in hordes and numbers. Extremely passionate set of audiences, and especially if you look at the South content, right? The Tamil spaces, the Tamil community itself is so lit. They have their own, passion points, and they come out very strong. And they are actually going to be your advocates for your brands. That's the whole objective, to build more advocates that they talk on behalf of you, and that's where you build that that compassion, that community back, and talk back to your audiences. I feel it's very important for fans to lean into, for brands to lean into these fan communities, and there are multiple ways of doing it. It can be done through design prior to a campaign, where you actually lean in, you give them a reason to come back and speak to you, and you create that entire campaign such that, whether you do a scavenger hunt on Twitter, or you get them to participate in a quiz, through giveaways, through gratification, you get them to lean in and participate. That is where it really works. So to give you an example, Netflix is genuinely has actually launched a South handle today. So they're actually being more inclusive. They're being more, talking back to that community. They understand the value of fan communities that sit out there, and they want to celebrate it. So launching a whole new handle specifically only for a community speaks about where the industry is really going.
Right. Even I saw, I think, one of the memes that they had made wherein Pablo Escobar is wearing a mund, and I think that is for one of the titles that they are like. I think the dubbing titles they are launching for
Yeah,
Narcos.
yeah.
So I have one interesting question in the comment section at LinkedIn. So one is asking, with theaters suffering massively, are there any tips for multiplex brands on how they can use Twitter to stay connected with the community?
Very interesting. I think constantly having a two-way conversation with your fans, don't let go of that. There are multiple ways of starting a banter, getting that participation, making sure that you are in sync with what's happening in the environment. See, Twitter gives you the direct lens into the conversations that are playing out around you, right? The pandemic that we are in right now, we understand and we need to be human as well as very empathetic to our audiences, and lean into that insight. So saying something that, come to the theaters right now would sound tone deaf at this moment. Knowing where you are, knowing where those conversations lie, and having a communication that is very human, and being very vulnerable. I think audiences truly appreciate when brands are vulnerable. They own up. If there is an error, they actually come up and say we are sorry, or they are, actually saying it how it is. So when multiplexes are suffering, which we all know they are, and we all empathize, I think there are ways of saying, don't come to the theaters right now. We want you to stay safe. We want you to stay healthy, and having that kind of a communication, right? We've seen this across brands globally, be it an Airbnb, be it travel and tourism brands who've said this can wait. You are more important right now. Your health is more important right now. Your family is more important. So I think knowing where your audiences lie, knowing what they are talking about, and being a brand that's more empathetic will win you in the long term. So hang in there.
Got it. And like, there's another question which is three things that work with Twitter audiences when it comes to marketing a book or a movie. Probably you can also share some content formats which work, because I know, like, my conversations in the past with marketers, they still don't like, they still are figuring out the kind of formats they should be very active with Twitter now.
Yeah.
And I do tell them that probably text based tweets is the first thing you should do to craft your personality, but more if it comes from you would help.
Yeah, Twitter is pretty text heavy, but to tell you, there are 3.5 billion videos being consumed on a daily basis on the timeline. So, video truly wins. Creating content that's snappy, that's engaging, that's Twittery, will get you a lot more love. But to answer how do you win on Twitter with the launch, be it a book, be it a title, I can actually deep dive into a title, and this can be rendered across various launches that you do in any category. But there's an expression where we call it YOLO, where you only launch once, and that launch needs to land correctly, right? So if no one's talking about you, have you really launched? And if I have to deconstruct how do you really launch and what is the Twitter launch playbook looking like, it would go from, it would be very different for a movie, it would be very different for a title or for a music piece, so even a sequel would have a very different way of launching. But if I had to make this a little more broader, we can break this down, and understand first what, how do you build that excitement and intrigue amongst fans, and how can they really lean in. So start with knowing your audience. The first thing we do is we really map the ongoing conversations on the timeline, and we look for marketing insights that can actually bring this to life. I'll give you an example. This is a global one, and for all your Marvel fans out there, Disney Plus recently announced a new show called Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And through our research, we actually gathered that Sam and Bucky, who are the characters in the show, are not that popular. But
Yes.
people still know the Captain America shield. They are very, like, if you see the shield anywhere, they will say this is Captain America. So the tweets itself showed us this insight that there were so many conversations around Captain America and the shield. So we used this and we actually sent the Marvel fan base on Twitter into a scavenger hunt, and we told them to go find the shield through tweets. We left hints everywhere and delighted users with about 100 custom merchandise giveaways that got them excited about the show. And all of this gained popularity for the show even before it launched. So imagine you've not dropped a teaser, you just announced a poster saying the show is coming, and then you get fans excited about it even before it drops. Follow this up with your dropping a teaser, dropping the trailer. There are cut down films, there is plot info, there's character reveals, all of this, the music launch, BTS films. Use all of this to win Twitter's audiences and get their attention. But there's a way to do this in a more innovative way, where you design for participation, right? Where you design for it by doing, multiple gratifications through a virtual quiz, use motion sensors, AR. So really fun ways of landing even the tease phase before you've launched a title. And this, I feel, is the most crucial phase for most marketers, where they're trying to get people excited and talk about and drive conversation before a launch. Cut to, you come to the launch. You must own what we call as our impact property on Twitter, using that as a tool to drive awareness. It's basically a spotlight, a first view, and a promoted trend that you can win. It's called the triple takeover, and you're the only brand that is trending for 24 hours on the timeline. I feel this is a really powerful tool to get people to know about what your launch is. You can also do this very innovatively. Like, we did this for Mirzapur season 2, and again we leaned into conversations that were playing out. Right, we understood people were so excited about the sequel that they were ready to watch it the minute it would drop, and the show was dropping at 12 at night. So fans were ready to binge watch the show all night. Using this insight, what Prime Video did was they actually did a all night jagrata, and they did a whole fan event where they got comedians to come in and talk about the show, the scenes, without giving away spoilers, but eventized the entire launch. So you're using a property like a spotlight, like the triple takeover, in the most innovative way to eventize it and call it an actual jagrata. So those are really fun ways of launching something. And then definitely don't miss out on the sustain phase, because you're watching a title. It's not like I'm going to drop the title and start watching because a platform, an OTT player has launched a new title there, right? I'm going to finish what I'm watching and then I'm going to switch. So the sustain phase really has a very important period where you lean into recommendations, you wait for people's reviews to come in and to play that up, maybe even do a relaunch.
Got it. And like speaking of the content formats, which I was saying, like, do you think memes as a content formats are a good measure of the conversations that are happening around a media and entertainment title? Like, do like the number of memes around a particular show or a particular movie, do they stand for something when you look at insights from a Twitter standpoint?
Oh, memes are really fun. I think that's where the Twitter audience really brings out their wit and their talent, and they take off. It's a good way to measure how your campaign's being viewed. Whether they have really fun memes. Some of them are repetitive, and some of them are resonate very strongly with us. So memes, moments, these are things that can be designed as part of your campaign objective and the way you're looking to drive conversation. So it really boils down to the mentions you get, the conversations that you drive, and how people are talking about it, right? So the content formats will vary. They could be through memes, they could be through text, through videos, through banter. other brands joining in, right? Sometimes you start a thread and it just takes off, and you see that one hashtag really, making the rounds on Twitter and everyone really talking about it. So these are some of them are really designed for participation. It's not like they just happened accidentally. Brands really think about this. It's part of their playbook, and then they launch it in the most sporadic way that it looks native.
Right. So I'll just digress a bit from media and entertainment. There's one question from Bhagyashri. She's asking, how can a financial brand make it more easy but interesting to engage with customers given the serious nature of products or services? If you have any insights on that.
Yeah, great question. I think financial products can do a lot. And the big way of doing this is through connecting with what's happening. Twitter has a bunch of moments, right? All year round, you've got these big moments that are happening. There's Diwali, there's Holi, Christmas, New Year, and there are the white calendar moments. Like you'll have a poetry day, you'll have a yoga day. Um, can a can a BFSI brand actually align a campaign based on these critical moments that make sense for their product, right? So you need to have a say on that day, or you need to have a reason to be there. I'll give you an example. We recently did a campaign with SBI. It's one of the biggest banks in the country, and they did a campaign around World Yoga Day. They did it 2 times in a row, and this is a brand that's understanding the conversations that are playing out right now. You know that the world is suffering, you know that there's a pandemic going on, people have mental health issues. Can a BFSI brand come in here and ask you to take a moment to pause, think about mind, body, and soul, and drive positive uptick, right? Because you're in such a the brand is not exciting, right? It's not like you're selling a phone or have an interesting title to talk about. But what you can do is you can talk about an issue like this, you can address it, and you can derive equity from a moment that's already playing out. The positive sentiment was 100% for SBI. And it really drove up their mentions, their conversations. I mean, it was through the roof. So connecting with moments, I feel, is a really strong way of doing an activation. Also use moments like cricket, right? You see Amphi, you see a lot of these BFSI brands, SBI cards, so to say, who lean into cricket as a moment and derive the positivity that's already playing up on the timeline. So yeah, that's my advice. Best thing to do is to while you're launching new products, also connect with moments that are positive and that are already making good noise on the timeline.
So you were talking about how, like, we've discussed a couple of cases on launching a particular title, and you did mention about how entertainment brands can increase the shelf life of their content, or can do much more in the post sustenance phase. So,
Yeah.
what are some of the tactics brands are employing at this point in time, and what is it that they should be doing more?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, the true shelf life of a brand is really beyond the launch. From AM to DM, Twitter is constantly talking. So even after your launch, there is a lot more you can do to make sure that that buzz is alive and people are really talking about it. So best thing is, you can spotlight the recommendations that come in, right? You use talent, creativity, as well as fans, and put them in the front row, get them a channel to talk about it, and drive the lower funnel metrics like app installs, or if you want to do a first stream. If those objectives are important to you, once you have launched and you have made that awareness as a big building block, you can move to the lower funnel metrics. The second thing you can do is consider this phase as a relaunch. So, as I said, it's not like you would drop something that you're already watching and start watching a new title. This is a way for you to wait and see what the conversations. You will ask for a recommendation from your friends. You will check Twitter. What are people talking about in this title? And here is a moment the brand can actually go out there and relaunch and re-talk and get people to stream on week 2, on week 3. So that's an exciting phase, because I'll tell you what, FOMO is real. once somebody has spoken about it, that FOMO hits you and you feel like I need to go and watch this content and be part of that conversation. So playing up or drumming up the FOMO metric would be a good one. But one very interesting way and an innovative way in which you can really close the user journey loop in the sustain phase is by doing something really fun and innovative. Okay, so I'll give you an example. We did this for the ISL last year. They had, the match where the finals were being played behind closed doors. Fans were not allowed. What they did was they actually got users to send in their cheers on Twitter, and they printed these cheers on strips of paper, which then became part of the finale. So the tweet confetti that you see when the trophy is given to the winning team, tweets actually showered down on players, and the players actually picked up user tweets and read them out. And it was a really nice fan moment where they connected back. And something that sat on your timeline today was a real life piece of tweet in that person's hand. Now, how we closed the loop in the sustain phase was we actually framed these tweets in a beautiful package and put some tweet confetti in it and shipped it back to the fans. So 100 fans actually got the tweet back, and then they went ahead and tweeted it out saying, "Thank you for this memento, and it sits with us for life." So, you're closing out a user journey in the sustain phase where you're not only focusing on the teas to get users to send in their cheers, to launch it with the entire activity itself, but you're also sending a physical piece back to the user, which closes the sustain loop and still gets them to talk about a moment that happened, say, 20 days before. So, yeah, those are fun ways of making sure that the sustain and the buzz and the conversation is still alive.
Interesting. There's one more question in comments. This is from Sai Sweta. She's asking, uh, how can we localize our campaigns on Twitter? We are a regional specific OTT platform, and it's important for us to hyper localize our campaigns.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the audience sets and cohorts are very available on Twitter. So, depending on where you are based, what kind of audience demographic you want to reach out to, you can 100% plan your campaign such that there's less spillover or no spillover and it reaches out to that desired audience only. So, you can actually map it through interests, through topics. We have about 7,000 plus topics that are mapped, and audiences and brands can reach out to users who are passionate about certain key topics. And you can even go deeper into their demographics or where they are placed. So multiple ways of making sure you reach out to only your cohort of audience.
But even geofencing could work in that
Yeah,
case, right?
geofencing, keyword targeting, you can go really deep.
Got it. And so there are two questions, and I'm trying to club them together. I mean, so Aman is asking, even when the content is crisp, how to get better discovery organically for a brand that doesn't have much of a following. And like Vedima earlier had asked that it's really difficult to drive organic impressions for a brand on Twitter. So what are probably some of the best practices for brands to grow from an organic standpoint?
Yeah, it is hard to grow organically. I wouldn't deny that fact. I feel there are ways of making your content interesting, getting the right talent or fans to actually talk about it and drum it up. Creating a campaign that's so strong that it lives outside of Twitter, so that people are talking about it on one day, but it makes headlines or hits a newspaper or shown on social samosa on day two. Those are ways of of really landing a strong campaign. But it truly comes down to insight. Like, you should know what are people talking about, what really matters to them at a personal level. When your campaign hits that chord and is created based on people interest, that's where an organic conversation would really become mainstream news the next day. So the more you deep dive into understanding what those conversations are, the stronger your your campaign could be organically as well.
So there's one more question, again, not media and entertainment, but from another sector. So Anshuman is asking, it will be really, really great if you could share some inputs, content formats, and strategy for educational institutes to drive engagement and reach their TG through Twitter. No one generally talks about educational institutes brands when it comes to Twitter. So if you could share some, again, some best practices for education brands on Twitter, then
Yeah,
what
we
we do.
Yeah, we absolutely have a ton of education brands that from Byju's to Upgrad, who are constantly on the timeline and making the right conversations and buzz. There is a product called Twitter Amplify, where we basically tie up with 2,000 publishers, credible publishers like NDTV, CNBC, name it, who can actually create custom content for you. And what you do is you run your ad as a pre roll against this piece of content and derive equity from it. So when a user comes in to watch, and it's completely designed as per the brand, right? Since you're an education brand, there will be certain key themes that you're going to look at. The Amplify product and the partnership that we do with any of these publishers could derive really solid content for you that gets your audiences to view that content and in turn view your positioning as well and your promise. So you can lean into that piece. You can also again go into interest targeting, speak back with very strong creative expression to your audiences basis what your promise is and how you want to relate back to the user. So completely use the lower funnel metrics to reach out in case you need conversions. And the upper funnel, you should definitely do an amplify kind of a product.
Got it. So I'll come back to entertainment again. So, Twitter Spaces is one of the latest talk of the town. We've had conversations with Twitter reps in the past also on that. So, what are some of the use cases you've seen from a media and entertainment perspective, which other brands should be following on Twitter Spaces?
Yeah, I love spaces. I think it's a great topic. Spaces is basically public conversation with sound on. So your social live audio is all the rage, and you're going beyond those 280 characters. I think it just seamlessly fits into the Twitter product because this is where we serve the public conversation, and now that conversation has a different way of being consumed in the form of audio. So spaces being the entirely new way of expressing human voice. It's controlled. So the number one thing for a brand to know is you have complete control when you're running a space. It's controlled, it's open, it's authentic, and it's happening right now. You have control to be the host. You can get up to 10 speakers on board, and you can decide who gets to speak and who doesn't get to speak. So that's a great way of the brand knowing exactly what's going to happen in that space. Very recently, we've done a ton of spaces, everything running from poetry to shairi to talking about serious topics like diversity, inclusion, inequality, to talking about new launches and releases. So if I were to specifically speak about M&E as a category, Disney Plus Hotstar had done a space with Tamanna for one of their shows called November Stories, and that really lit up. You had a really cool way of connecting with talent and asking them questions. Your questions actually get spotlighted in a space if the brand wants to show it, and the talent can actually address and answer those. We also did one which really blew up, which was Sony Music, which basically did a space for Jagame Thandiram again, and this was starring Dhanush. This one actually got them about 17,000 concurrent listeners, for that space. It completely erupted. That whole community, as I said, is so passionate that they all came in numbers and asked a lot of questions and were part of this interesting audio exchange. We've seen live concerts go on for 6 hours, people actually sending in requests and artists responding back. So, very fun use cases in the musical space. And Spotify recently did one with RJ Balaji. where imagine they were launching their podcast, so an audio product, and they use Spaces, which is an audio product, to promote it. So a very very strong use case that too got about 11,000 people tuning in. So yeah, I think this is a really lit space. You can do it organically. You can also promote it to get more participation beyond your followers. It shows up in your fleets as a purple bubble. I think it's a great ad format for brands to try out.
And like, what are some of the, like, have you identified any big content creators from a spaces perspective in India? Like people who host spaces very often, and probably brands could engage with them to start their spaces journey.
A lot of them actually totally depends on what your brand
Mhm.
positioning is, and who would be the right person that represents your brand. So that could be a completely open question, but everyone from music artists to actors to comedians, they've all made their mark on the platform. We had AR Rahman come in, we've had really really strong business associates come in. So the range is endless, completely depends on where the brand's promise lies and who is the right fit for them in terms of an influencer.
Got it. So there's another question: is Twitter trending worth it? I hear it doesn't trigger enough engagement.
No, definitely. It's the only impact property on Twitter. So only one brand can own the trend on a particular day. You've got your triple takeover that definitely gives you that added awareness and added layer of engagement. Twitter, probably is the only platform built for perception. So when you come in here, you may think that the engagement numbers or the scale is at a certain level, but what it does for a brand and where it makes headlines beyond Twitter through earned media is something you can't measure. So I feel here's where opinions are formed, here's where perception is driven, and owning that trend on that day, you are in the driver's seat, telling your side of the story and setting the tone for the conversations that will follow. And hence, that trend or that takeover product is so essential, and that's why global brands and every brand uses it. We're pretty much booked out. So those are reasons why it really works for them.
And there's one more question, like again, not media and entertainment, but how can startup founders bring more visibility over Twitter? There are enough and more examples in that sense. There is an Elon Musk, there is Vijay Shekhar Sharma from Paytm, and so on. But then, say if a new startup founder has to start fresh on Twitter, what are some of the things they should take care of?
Yeah, I think there are ways to crush it on Twitter and to get that audience and that community to really build up. Um, what you can do and start off with is think of a core topic that is important to you, right? So because all of us have a lot of interest points, right? If you talk about everything together, you're not talking to a certain community. My advice is probably start small. Think of one thing that you're really good at or one thing that you're really passionate about, probably closer to your business, because that's the objective and the startup that you want to really bring to the fore. Go really really specific. So your first 100 days on the timeline, you only speak about your best practices, what you would do based on a single topic, and slowly you expand this entire diagram and you get people to know more about you, to get to know if you have additional passion points about your family, about your dog, about your interests. But start small, and that's where you will gain a core followership basis, that information that you're landing. So that's just one way of crushing it on Twitter. Also, brevity is everything. The shorter, the more compressed, the more dense your ideas are, and the more you can say it in less than 50 characters, the stronger it is, and the stronger it lands. So a lot of content tips there, but I would think talk about a single topic if you're in the startup industry, and nail that. Get people to follow you for that knowledge that you possess, and then delve into other things. So expose yourself slowly.
Got it. So Nitish is asking, and I think that was a part of my question also. So what's your favorite? So he's asked, what's your favorite Twitter marketing page? But like, I would rephrase it saying that what are like say top three people I should follow on Twitter, and probably top three brands I should follow on Twitter to learn how to use Twitter.
Um, Really interesting question. I think, of course, follow Elon Musk. He's one of my favorite and the most dynamic users on the timeline. There's another person called Matthew Mobach. I can put it in the chat. He's
Yeah.
really good. I think his advice across Twitter is fantastic, and I love that. Narendra Modi, Anand Mahindra, these are some big names, but definitely making the right noise. I think Anand Mahindra is really a strong case in point. He does get that right. He genuinely uses the Twitter web to know about his business, to know about what people are talking, and to share a little bit about himself. So you have to give something back to the Twitter user when you are asking for followers, and that's something he really nails. So yeah, that's a mix of some global and Indian people that I follow day in and day out. I do follow a lot of sports pages. So in case you're a sports fan, I think there's quite a bit out there, for you to lean into. What was the second question, Nitish?
From a brand perspective, like say top three brands I should be following.
I think since we're on M&E, I'm gonna
Yeah.
stick to M&E and give you definitely Netflix. I think Netflix has a personality across countries. So the Netflix India handle is different from the global handle to the Australia handle, a London handle, and it is so fantastic to see the tonality that each handle has. Like the Australia handle talks only in memes. That's all they talk to, and they are very the London handle, the UK one is super dry. Like they have dry English humor. All their tweets are sarcastic and have that little tonality to it. The US Netflix handle is really geeky and cool. Everything is really very upbeat and very cool about them. India handle is also fantastic. I know the person behind it also and does such a phenomenal job of keeping that engagement on. So yeah, Netflix across all countries is what I would recommend. Um, it's really good. I think Amazon's Prime Videos also got their game really strong now. Over the past 1.5 year, they're nailing their tweets. They've really got the organic strategy also right. So once you build your community, then you can really drum up the organic tweets as well. So yeah, these two brands definitely from the M&E space.
Right. We'll just take last two questions, one from the audience and one which I had at my end. So Divya is again asking, how do small brands reach out to sales teams from Twitter and get responses to briefs? I believe in India, just resellers selling one size fits all products, which is not attractive to marketers. So they have like if there is a channel for them to reach out to the sales team at Twitter, that's what
Yeah,
I.
yeah, we do have two separate sales teams. There's one, the large client solutions, where we look at the top 30 brands of the country and give them a lot of white glove service and work extremely closely with them. And she's right, there is a reseller team that looks at all other brands. They look at like 300, 400 brands across the country. Um, I think if you really sit down with them, there isn't a one size fits all way of approaching it. They do deep dive and they do spend time in sharing the right way of launching on Twitter. And there's a lot of material available on our blog posts that you can read and know a lot more about. So even if you don't get that advice straight from reseller teams, it's all available across our marketing blogs. So feel free to check those out. See all the case studies, insights, research. It's publicly available, and that could drum up some ideas for you, and you can launch better.
Alright. So my last question, and I think the last question for the chat as well. So, like, if you could just summarize 4 or 5 trends that entertainment industry in general should foresee in the near future and should have have them on the top of their list.
Yeah. I think top trend is definitely personalization. Um, Personalization of content will play a major role in this year, and that will be a key differentiator for viewers. To actually get that personalized viewing experience. OTTs, really strategize on their recommendation engines, on tailor-made content, and create adaptable user experiences for the platform. And that is something that will really help them. We also do this on Twitter, where we, as I said, the play this concept. We did this with Netflix, where we did a longer stint, and this also became a global case study where we did Netflix Matchmaker, and we literally mapped emojis to a title that sits within the Netflix library, and these were all mapped. So every time a user dropped an emoji, with the campaign hashtag Netflix Matchmaker, they would get a recommendation of a film on based on their mood. And this became a long-term proposition that they did, and they really personalized the experience of watching movies and content based on your mood. So this one also won them a lot of awards and has become a campaign that will be taken out globally as well. um, Second big trend to look out for is being interactive and real time. So the content being really interactive. Within you can have on the go dynamics. You actually have in game ads and contents. You have multiple endings. You could have reward based shows. I feel this is very futuristic. We've seen this in Black Mirror, and it could happen in the near future, but those are trends that we see internationally and that India could soon pick up. And yeah, regionalization of content. I think that's a big one. Go regional, listen to your audiences. I think that's a big trend for this year. All non Hindi markets are getting into this and getting stronger. So I would leave you with these three big moments that could play out as big trends.
Yes. Thank you, Neha. Thanks a lot for sharing amazing insights on the session. There are quite a lot of other questions as well, but probably like we'll share it with you in an email and you could answer them for these people. Thank you.
For sure.
Thanks a lot, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, Neha, once again.
Thank you. Thanks, Hitesh.